The blizzard and the song, the sky was white. The world was silent. A deadly snowstorm covered the planet in thick, cold wind. There were no birds, no trees, no sun, only snow and silence. Laura held her baby close. Her arms were shaking, her body weak. She sat under the broken wing of an old alien ship long dead, half covered in ice. The metal was sharp and cold, but it gave a little shelter from the wind. Her baby was not crying anymore. That scared her. Crying meant life. Silence meant death. The child's small body was wrapped in animal skin, but it was not enough. His purple skin had turned pale, and his breathing was slow. Laura looked at his face, her eyes full of tears that froze before they could fall. There was no food left. No heat. She had tried to start a fire 3 times, but the wind killed it every time. Her hands were raw and bleeding from the cold. Her legs didn't move much now. If help didn't come, they would both die soon, but no help was coming. No one else was out there. Her people had left this planet weeks ago. They had run when the last human colony fell. Only Laura remained, left behind by mistake, or maybe on purpose. She looked at the sky. It was full of snow, spinning fast like angry ghosts. She closed her eyes and pulled her baby closer. Then, softly, she began to sing. It was an old song from her homeworld. A lullaby. Her mother had sung it to her when she was young. Now she sang it for her baby one last time. Her voice was soft, broken, but the melody floated in the frozen air. Sleep, child of stars, drift past the light. Close your eyes. No more pain, till morning takes the night. The snow didn't stop. The storm grew louder. But she kept singing, her voice cracked. Her lips were bleeding, but she would not stop. If this was the end, her child would not die in silence. He would die with love. She sang the last line and then lowered her head, holding him close. That's when she saw it. A shape. In the snow. Far ahead, almost invisible in the white wind, something moved. At first, she thought it was a trick. A dream, her mind playing games with her before death. But no. It was real. The shape came closer. Step by step. It was tall, broad, wearing something black, maybe armor or a suit. Snowflakes bounced off its helmet. It walked slowly, like it was tired. Or cautious. Laura's heart jumped. Was it a beast? Was it death? Was it one of her people? Then, as it came closer, she saw it clearly. It was a human. She gasped. Her body moved back, her arms tightening around her baby. Fear burned through her. Humans were killers. Her people had fought them in the last war. They had destroyed cities, burned forests, shot down ships. Why was one here now? The human stopped. Just a few steps away. He didn't speak. His helmet was dark. His hands were up, not in attack, but in peace. Then, slowly, he knelt in front of her. He took something from his suit. A small black box. He placed it gently on the snow between them. Laura stared at the box. It beeped softly and began to glow. A wave of heat came from it, warm and soft. She felt it touch her frozen skin. The baby stirred a little. She looked up. At the human, he didn't move. He only pointed at the box, then at the baby. Laura didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. He was not here to kill, he was here to help. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what to do. Was this a trick? Was he lying? But the warmth was real. Her baby's skin felt less cold now. She touched the heat box and brought it closer to her child. Slowly, she pushed back the blanket and placed the warm box next to him. The child let out a soft sound. He was alive. Laura looked at the human again. Still no words, still no movement, just silence and snow. And him, who was he? Why was he helping? She didn't know, but as the storm howled louder outside their broken shelter, and her baby's chest began to rise and fall again, Laura felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. And the human? He was still watching, still waiting. The wind was still angry. It screamed through the dead trees like a warning, like it wanted them to leave, but they didn't. Laura sat silently, her back against cold metal. Her arms were wrapped around her baby, and her eyes wide, unblinking, were fixed on the human in front of her. He hadn't moved in minutes. Snow collected on his shoulders. His helmet hid his face. He looked like a statue made of shadows and steel. The small heat box between them glowed with a soft red light. Warm air drifted out in waves, pushing back the cold. Her baby's color was returning just a little. His chest rose and fell again, alive, still alive. She didn't speak. She didn't trust her voice. The human he watched her, quiet, calm. Then he slowly stood up. His movements were slow, careful. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't show his face. He just turned slightly and pointed into the snowstorm. He wanted her to follow. Laura's heart raced. Her people had always said, if you see a human, you run. But now? There was no place to run? The storm had buried every path, every road, every chance of escape, and this one. He had saved her child. Still, she hesitated. The human waited. The wind howled louder. The sky was falling in pieces. Finally, she stood. Her legs were weak. Her body ached. She lifted her baby close to her chest and stepped forward, slow and unsure. The human didn't turn around. He simply walked through the snow, into the white, and Laura followed. They walked for what felt like hours. The snow never stopped. It fell sideways, up, down every direction. The cold bit into her skin. Her feet were numb. But she kept walking, because the human didn't stop. His boots crunched against the frozen ground. His black suit shimmered in the storm, lights blinking across his back. He looked like a machine, cold, strong, unbreakable. Then, finally, they saw it, a shape in the snow. A half-buried wreck, twisted metal, burned panels. A broken flag that flapped in the wind. It was a human ship. Not large, just a cargo pod, probably from a supply drop gone wrong. The human approached the door and touched a panel on his wrist. A small spark shot out. The ship's side door slid open with a painful creak. Warmth, light, shelter. Laura didn't wait. She rushed inside, shielding her baby. The air inside was dry, heavy, but not freezing. It was broken, but it was safe. The door shut behind them. The storm disappeared. Silence. She turned and looked at the human again. For the first time, he removed his helmet. His face was not what she expected. He was young, maybe too young for a soldier. Brown eyes, short hair. A long scar across one cheek. His eyes didn't hold anger. They held tiredness. And something stranger. Something gentle. He reached for something on the wall, an old metal box with a red cross. A human medical kit. He opened it and pulled out a small pack. Heat cells. He activated one and handed it to her. Laura stared at it, then took it. She wrapped it into her child's blanket. The warmth was instant. The baby made a soft noise. His eyes blinked once. She almost cried. The human didn't say anything. He sat down in the corner, back against the wall, breathing slow. Finally, he spoke. Just one word. Mark. Laura blinked. Mark? He pointed to himself. Mark, she understood. His name. She touched her chest. Laura. He nodded. Two names in the silence. Two enemies in a broken room. Two parents of different worlds, one lost, one saved. Laura looked around. The ship was in bad shape. The power systems were flickering. Supplies were few. But here, at least, they would not freeze. She sat down across from him. Still holding her baby. Mark reached into his bag and pulled out a metal ration bar. He broke it in half and slid one piece toward her. Laura hesitated. Then took it. It tasted like ash, but it was food. Real food, for the first time in days. She ate. Mark leaned back and closed his eyes, just for a second, and Laura, she watched him. This human had come from nowhere. Into the storm, into her death. And instead of killing her, he had given her warmth, safety, and food. Why? She didn't know yet, but she would, and maybe, just maybe, this storm wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. Silence had a sound. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sharp. It was the sound of nothing moving. No footsteps, no machines. No life. Just breathing. Inside the broken human cargo ship, time moved slowly. The storm outside was still screaming, but here, inside this metal skeleton, it was quiet. Laura sat near the corner, her baby asleep on her chest. His skin was warmer now. His breathing was steady. That alone felt like a miracle. She could still hear the lullaby in her head. Not because she was singing it anymore, but because death was no longer near. Hope had taken its place. Across from her, Mark the human was trying to fix something. Wires sparked in his hands. A damaged panel from the ship's main wall. His fingers were steady, but his eyes showed something deeper, not fear. Not pain. Purpose. Laura didn't understand what he was doing, but she watched closely. He had removed his black jacket and tied it around a pipe to block a hole in the wall. The heat was slowly returning to the room. Small things. Little actions, yet every move he made pulled her and her child farther from death. She shifted slightly, careful not to wake the baby, and whispered the word, "Why?" Mark didn't look at her. He kept working. A soft blue spark jumped from the wires, and then suddenly a hum filled the air. Power. Weak. Flickering lights blinked on in the ceiling. A heating fan started buzzing in the corner. The room was no longer dead. Mark finally looked at her and gave a single nod. She repeated the word, slower this time. "Why?" "Help me." Mark paused. Then he picked up a small round object from the floor. He wiped the dust off and rolled it across the ground. It stopped just in front of her, a child's toy, old, cracked. It looked human, something simple from Earth, a spinning ring with a smiley face. Laura picked it up. He pointed to it, then to her child, then to his chest. And finally he said just two words, "Mine too." Laura's breath caught. He had lost a child, or maybe he had a child out there, somewhere, alone, like her. The words were few, but the meaning was heavy. They were no longer enemies. Not here, not now. Just two survivors who had once been parents. Suddenly, a sound, metal shifted somewhere deep inside the ship. Laura's ears twitched. Her body tensed. Mark heard it too. He stood up fast, pulling a small device from his belt, some kind of scanner. He moved to the hallway, staying low. Laura held her baby tight and waited. The ship creaked. Something or someone was walking. Inside. Mark tapped the screen on his device. A blinking red dot showed movement, just one. For now he turned to her and made a motion with his hands. "Stay, hide." She nodded. Mark moved into the dark hallway alone. His steps were silent. The only sound was the wind outside, and the metal echo of boots inside. Laura pressed her back to the wall, covering her baby. She listened. 1 minute passed, then another, then a short flash of light. A soft thud. And then silence again. Mark returned. A long scratch marked his sleeve, but he was okay. In his hand, he carried the body of a small snow beast, white, sharp-toothed, thin as bone. It had tried to enter through the cargo ramp below, probably hunting warmth or meat. Mark tossed the body outside the broken door and locked it tight. Laura watched him, her eyes wide. He was not just kind, he was dangerous. When he needed to be, he sat down again, breathing hard. This man, this human had entered her life through a blizzard. Now he had saved her twice, not with words, not with weapons. With action. She opened her small satchel. Inside was one dry root, her last piece of food from home. She broke it in two and held half toward him. Mark looked at it, then at her. He smiled softly and took it. That night inside the broken ship, lit only by flickering lights, a human and an alien sat on opposite sides of a war-torn room, sharing a meal. Outside, the storm screamed, but inside there was warmth, and something more dangerous than any weapon. Trust. It started with a smell, not sound, not movement, just a sharp, bitter scent that burned the air like blood, metal, and hunger. Mark smelled it first. He froze near the airlock. His eyes narrowed. He placed one hand slowly on the cold wall, as if feeling for a heartbeat in the metal. Laura noticed his change. She rose quietly, keeping her baby close. The ship had gone silent again. Too silent. Even the wind outside seemed to be listening. Mark picked up his scanner and checked the display. The screen blinked, one red, then two, then three. They were circling the ship. Laura didn't need translation. She understood the look in his eyes. Danger. Mark moved fast but quiet. He pointed to the inner cargo bay deeper in the wreck. A safer room with a sealed door. Laura nodded, gripping her child tightly and following him. They locked themselves in, then they waited. The sound came 5 minutes later, a scratch, long and slow, across metal then another. Then a low growl, deep and wet like something dragging its throat across the ground. Laura's body stiffened. She had heard this sound before. Snow stalkers, predators, silent hunters, not large but smart, fast and hungry. Known to follow heat signals for miles, they liked the storm. It hid their steps. It made prey easier to kill. Mark pulled open a storage case in the wall inside, an old pulse rifle. Low on charge. 2 bars left. Maybe 3 shots, he cursed under his breath. He motioned to Laura again. Hide, stay, protect the baby. She backed into the shadows behind a broken crate, wrapping herself in thermal foil, silent as ice. Then the sound changed. A crash. They were inside. Mark stepped into the hallway. Rifle raised, one of the beasts had broken through the side vent, its body lean, fur white as bone, eyes glowing faint green. Claws longer than a knife. It saw him. It leaped. Mark fired once. The bolt hit its leg. It screamed but didn't stop. They rolled across the floor, man and monster locked in a blur of teeth and fists. Laura heard the fight but didn't move. Nah. Yet, her child's small breaths were fast. She closed her eyes and whispered a silent song. Barely audible, another crash, a second beast came through a side panel. This time, Laura saw it, and it saw her. It bared its teeth and lunged toward the crate. Her instincts took over. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She stood, and she held out a flare, one of the few tools left in her satchel. She snapped it alive, and red fire burst from her hand. The beast froze just long enough. Bang! Mark appeared behind it. His last shot hit the creature in the side of the head. It dropped instantly. He turned to Laura, panting, eyes wide. Then he smiled, just a little. Laura held the flare high, the red glow lighting both of their faces. Only one beast left. They both knew it. The silence returned. Mark handed her a metal rod, no charge, but heavy. Then he moved down the hallway, following the trail of claw marks and blood. The last snow stalker was waiting, not running, not hiding. It was hunting too. Mark turned the corner, and there it was, sitting atop the power core, breathing hard. It watched him, slow and steady. It was larger than the others, older, smarter than. It ran. Straight at him. Mark didn't flinch. He raised the empty rifle and swung it like a bat. It cracked against the beast's skull. They both fell. Laura heard the crash and ran forward, the baby strapped tight to her chest. She saw the 2 shapes rolling in the dark, and without thinking, she stabbed the glowing rod into the beast's side. It sparked. The creature howled. Mark drove a broken metal shard deep into its neck. Silence. It was over. The 2 stood there, breathing hard, covered in snow, sweat, and blood. The floor was stained. The air smelled like fire, but they were alive. Laura leaned against the wall, legs shaking. Mark crouched nearby, pressing his hand to a deep cut on his arm. She walked over, reached into her satchel, and carefully wrapped the wound using her last strip of cloth. He didn't stop her. He just looked at her, grateful, tired. No words were spoken, but everything was understood. That night, while the snowstorm outside roared louder than ever, 2 enemies slept in the same room, one human, one alien. One bond built in blood, heat, and survival, and the baby. He slept peacefully for the first time in days. Not every language needs words. Some languages are made of looks, of small hands holding broken pieces, of silence shared between 2 people who should be enemies, but aren't. Laura woke first. The storm still whispered against the walls, but the ship was holding. The lights flickered gently. The warmth was steady now. Her baby lay against her chest, eyes closed, breathing calm. A soft sound escaped his lips, a baby's dream. For the first time since the crash, she smiled. Across the room, Mark slept against the wall, arms folded, jacket half open, dirt and dried blood on his face. His body was still. His chest rose and fell like slow waves. She watched him for a moment, not with fear, with curiosity. Who was he before this? A soldier? A father? Both? What had he lost? What had he seen? She didn't know his story, he didn't know hers, and yet they had bled together, fought beside each other. Protected life. That meant something. Later, when Mark woke, he didn't speak. He just gave a small nod. She returned it. That was their hello. He stood up, limping slightly. The wound on his arm was worse now, red, swollen. Laura motioned for him to sit. He hesitated, but obeyed. She pulled herbs from her pouch, thin strips of dry yellow leaves, crushed them between her fingers. She added water from the ship's tank and stirred with a piece of metal. The liquid turned green. Mark raised an eyebrow. She dipped a cloth into it and pressed it gently to his wound. He winced, but stayed still. The room was quiet, but something invisible passed between them, a kind of agreement, a kind of peace. When she was done, he looked at her for a long moment, then carefully he pulled something from his jacket, a photograph, old, torn at the edges, faded from water and time. He held it toward her. She took it gently. A woman. A child, human, like him, smiling, standing under a blue sky. Laura's chest tightened. She handed the photo back, then placed her hand on her heart. Mark gave a soft, sad smile. Home, he whispered. Then he pointed at her, gently, and then at her baby. Home, he said again. She nodded. Their families were different. Their species were different, but the feeling was the same. Love, loss, hope. Later, they sat together near the ship's central console. Mark opened a panel and pulled out a small screen. He connected it to a broken transmitter and tapped a few buttons. The screen lit up. A single signal bar blinked, weak but real. He looked at her, eyes serious. Rescue, he said. Then he pointed at the blinking dot. Maybe. She leaned in. The screen showed a location somewhere west, beyond. The storm. Too far to walk. Too dangerous to wait. She understood the message. Help might be out there. But time was running out. She looked at her child, then at him. She nodded again. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That night, as they sat near the soft hum of the heater, Mark picked up a broken metal plate and began to draw on it with a knife. A rough shape appeared, a map. He pointed at where they were, then drew a mountain, a cave, a symbol for shelter. Another signal tower. Laura watched, fascinated. She took the knife and drew a line next to her own path. Her memories of the land. They passed the plate back and forth, drawing, pointing, smiling. No translator, no device, just hands and hearts. She showed him the lullaby movements from her world, small gestures mothers made to calm children. He watched carefully, then copied them. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying, and sometimes trying is enough. Outside, the storm began to slow. The wind dropped. The snow turned soft, falling like feathers instead of knives. Laura looked out the cracked window. The white world was still deadly. But now it didn't feel endless. Now it felt possible, because someone had stepped into her life when everything was lost, and now he wasn't just a human anymore. He was part of her survival, part of her story, maybe even part of her future. Rescue wasn't always good. Sometimes it came with loud boots and cold eyes. Sometimes it brought more questions than safety. And sometimes it came too late. The signal had worked. Mark's broken transmitter had reached someone somewhere. But it wasn't humans who answered first. It was them, Laura's people. Her own. The ship appeared through the clouds like a silent shadow. Black wings, blue lights, government markings on the side. It didn't land near the wreck. It hovered just above the snow, sending down a small scout pod with 3 soldiers inside. Laura recognized the symbol on their shoulders. High Command. She hadn't seen her kind in weeks. When she heard their language echo through the storm, her hands began to shake. She was holding her child when they arrived. Mark stepped back into the shadows of the wreck. His eyes met hers. He didn't ask. He didn't beg, but she knew what he was thinking. Would she protect him or give him up? The first soldier to enter the broken ship was tall, wearing gray armor. His helmet stayed on, but Laura knew his voice. Commander Rask. An old officer from her homeworld, cold, loyal to rules, not hearts. He looked at her baby first, then at the room, then finally at her face. You survived, he said flatly. We thought you were dead. Laura stood straight, almost was. He walked slowly through the ship, boots crunching over broken metal. What happened here? He asked. She said nothing. Behind her, Mark stayed hidden, completely still. The commander continued. We received a signal from this location, human tech. We came to clear it, not help. Not rescue. Clear. Then Rask turned to her. Were you alone? Laura's hands TNSED. Her child made a soft sound in his sleep. She looked at the cold face of her commander, and then at the shadows where Mark stood, watching quietly with no weapon, no defense. She took a breath and lied. Yes. Rask paused, his helmet tilted slightly, like he didn't believe her. His eyes scanned the room. The heat core, the medical tools, the map carved into metal. Too advanced for one alien mother. Strange, he said. She forced a calm voice. I scavenged from the wreck. He stared at her baby. You fed the child? Kept him warm, alone? Yes. A long silence followed, then a small cry. It came from the far wall, from the shadows. Her baby wasn't the only sound. Now, Mark had coughed. Quiet, but not quiet enough. The commander's body stiffened. His hand reached for his weapon. Laura stepped in front of him. Don't, she said sharply. Rask looked at her. You're protecting a human? He saved my son, she replied. The room felt colder than the storm outside. He is the reason we're alive, she continued. He gave us heat, food, fought the beasts, not as an enemy, as a protector. Commander Rask stared at her, stunned. Then his voice turned sharp. He's the enemy, Laura. He's from the war. She stepped closer, and I was from the war too. We all were, but the war is over. Rask pulled out his communicator. We should take him. Interrogate him. He might be a scout. Laura's voice turned to steel. If you touch him, I'll report everything. I'll tell High Council that he saved a child from our world when none of our own people came. Rask's jaw clenched. She's bluffing, one of the soldiers muttered, but Laura stepped aside. Mark came out of the shadows, hands up. Calm, not afraid. And then, to everyone's surprise, he knelt. Not begging, not submitting, just showing he didn't come to fight. Rask stared at him. You'd surrender to me? Mark looked at Laura, then at the child. He didn't speak, but his eyes said it all. Alev. Let the child live. Even if I don't, Laura turned to her commander. If you harm him, we become the monsters. Another silence. The kind that decides fate. Then Rask lowered his gun. He turned away. We didn't see anyone. Understood? The other soldiers nodded. Laura exhaled. Finally. The commander didn't look at Mark again. He simply walked out. As he left, he gave Laura one last glance. You'll have to explain this someday. I will, she said. And I'll be proud of it. The pod lifted off. The larger ship disappeared into the clouds, taking the past. With it. Inside the wreckage, Laura knelt next to Mark. You stayed, she whispered. He nodded. You trusted me. Another nod. She touched his arm softly. So now, we leave. Together, Mark gave a tired smile. Not everything had been fixed. Not everything was safe, but for the first time, both human and alien had chosen each other, not out of fear, but out of something stronger. Some stories end with silence. Some with fire. But the rarest stories end with a choice, and Laura now stood at the edge of one. The storm had passed. After days of wind and white death, the sky was finally clear. Soft light touched the frozen ground. The snow no longer screamed. It listened. Laura stepped out of the broken ship, holding her baby close. Mark walked behind her, quiet, his eyes scanning the horizon. They had no more supplies. No more warmth. But they had something else now. Direction. Mark, single quotes, S map half memory. Hofguess led toward the western ridge, where a human outpost might still send emergency signals. If it still stood. If it still wanted to help. They moved slowly across the white plain. The baby slept against Laura's chest, wrapped in heat foil. His breathing soft, alive. Mark walked with a limp, his wound worse after days of fighting and hiding. But he didn't complain. He never had. Each step forward was painful, but each step forward meant one thing. They had not given up. By evening, the ground began to change. Rocks replaced snow, the wind dropped to whispers. Laura looked up and saw it, a tower half collapsed, blinking red. It was real. Mark fell to his knees. laughing under his breath, the last working signal post, a chance to call for rescue, a final chance. They entered the small outpost. The air inside was thin and stale, but still breathable. Solar panels barely powered the walls. Old human tech covered in dust. A single console blinked weakly. Mark placed his hand on the scanner. The screen came to life. Connection found. He looked at Lura. One call. One button. One rescue. But the screen blinked again. This signal will auto-report to human command. All alien life in zone will be scanned and reported. Strict no-contact laws still active. Lura read the warning slowly. If Mark sent the signal, she and her baby could be labeled a threat, another war, another file, another target. Her heart sank. Mark looked at her. Then at the child, then back at the button. He understood. Calling for rescue might save him, but risk them. He stepped away from the console, then did something she never expected. He reached into his bag, pulled out the last remaining flare, and placed it in her hand. She shook her head, confused. He pointed out the small window. To the mountain trail. To the far side of the ridge. You go. Her voice shook. No, not without you. Mark smiled softly. I'm human. I call them. They come. You're gone. A pause. You live. Lura stared at him. No, she whispered. Her child stirred in her arms. Mark turned to the console. Again, finger hovering over the rescue button, he looked back at her one last time. Let me be the reason this world changes. Silence, wind brushing against glass. Lura walked forward and placed her hand over his. Then together, they pressed the button. The signal went out, high above. A satellite blinked to life. Coordinates locked. Rescue inbound. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They waited, standing in the light of the rising sun, surrounded by broken walls and the smell of frozen metal. When the rescue craft arrived, 3 humans stepped out in black suits. Armed but not aggressive. They stopped in front of Lura, then looked at Mark. Nobody spoke. The lead rescuer raised his visor, a woman. Curious, she looked at the child. At Lura. Then at Mark again. You sure about this? Mark gave a tired smile. Yes, she's not the enemy. A pause. Neither are we. The soldier lowered her weapon. She waved a hand. Bring them both. Lura blinked. She didn't move. Mark nodded slowly. It's okay, he whispered. Lura stepped forward. And for the first time in her life, a human hand reached for hers. Not to take, not to strike, but to welcome. The child opened his eyes, and in that moment, a war ended, not on a battlefield, but in the arms of a mother, and the heart of a soldier, and the silence between enemies who chose to be more. Not every story ends in death. Some end in change.